Welcome to another TheGearTester tabletop review. Today I'd like to talk to you about the Sog Seal Pup Elite. This is an excellent fixed blade knife, actually one of my overall favorite fixed blade knives that I own, and I would definitely recommend it to you if you're in the market looking for a really quality, a very high quality fixed blade knife which is rugged, which is rust resistant, and which is just an overall excellent blade. The Sog Seal Pup's actual blade is 4.85 inches long. It is fractionally smaller than 3/16, just barely under 3/16 of an inch thick, which make this for the size of this knife, a very strong, very sturdy, very rugged blade. When you hold it in your hand, you really feel like you have a tool. The overall length of this blade from the tip to the back of the handle is 9.5 inches. It weighs 5.4 ounces. So this is a super lightweight knife, under a third of a pound. So at the 5.4 ounces, that's a super lightweight knife. That's not counting the sheath. The Sog Seal Pup Elite comes in both serrated and non-serrated versions. It also comes with this black TINI hard cased coating on it, or you can get it with a polished blade as well. And I like that Sog is giving us options. I personally do not like serrated blades for the uses which I have for them, which is bushcrafting, backpacking and things like that. I don't need serrations. If you were going to use this a lot, where you'd be in situations where you need to be cutting rope, I would definitely go with those serrations. The steel that the Sog Seal Pup Elite is made out of is AUS 8, and I really like AUS 8. This is one of a number of knives which I have that use AUS 8 steel, and I've been really impressed with it. AUS 8, for those of you who don't know, is a steel which has many of the properties of stainless steel, meaning that it resists rusting, but it has some of the same properties of 1095 steel, which is a high carbon steel, which allows a really good edge retention, meaning that as you move towards a metal that does not rust easily because it has less carbon in it, your chances of having the knife dull quickly also go up. So AUS 8 has some of the properties of both of those metals. Probably a really good middle of the line metal to be using for a knife like this, meaning I don't have to worry if I get some water on it, it's not going to super rust up. If I'm in an environment or climate where there's salt water, I don't have to super spend a lot of time worrying about my blades, and I also don't have to worry about sharpening my blade. So it really makes this knife just an overall hard use knife. Would be in my category of just a working knife, and that's really where I think this Sog Seal Pup Elite excels. If you need a knife that's just going to keep going, chop, hack, slash, I've used this knife for over 2 years now, and I've sharpened it myself just with a little diamond sharpener a couple times, and that comes right back to a really sharp edge. On the Rockwell hardness scale, and that's a scale that's used to determine the hardness of different steels, it's 57 to 58. Its handle is a hard plastic, or a grivery almost. I really like it. It has this checkering on it, which is very purposeful, allows me to really get my hands in. It does not have a separate hilt. I like that the hilt, which is this portion of the knife right here, is made out of just the same material that the handle's made out of. For me, that creates less of a breakage point, I think. Many knives that have a hilt have to be cut down into the stock, and that tends to make a weak point in the blade. I like that Sog has just used a connected hilt out of this same hard plastic material. It is very purposeful, it is very sturdy, and has not shown really any wear and tear since I've been using this knife. The Sog Seal Pup Elite comes with either this kydex sheath or a nylon sheath, and you're going to want to be careful if you decide to order this knife that you get the sheath you want. I personally don't really like nylon sheaths. The Sog Seal Pup Elite sheath, the nylon sheath, it does have like a kydex or plastic insert in it that does allow some blade retention. I just don't really like nylon sheaths. I really like kydex high quality kydex or plastic sheaths, or really high quality leather sheaths. But I'm not really into the nylon sheath. I have modified this Sog Seal Pup kydex sheath quite significantly. One of the selling points that Sog has made a big deal out of on these Sog Seal knives, they have the larger original knife, the Sog Seal knife, which supposedly is used by the United States Navy SEALs, that it has this little cut into the sheath here, allowing you to insert your blade into the sheath and use it to cut things without having the whole knife out. I personally don't really like that feature, so I've just used what are sometimes called Ranger bands, which are basically just pieces of bicycle tire that I've cut, and then because of their stretchy, almost like a rubber band, I just pulled them up and over and covered this. I believe the individual that helped design this sheath was in a training operation with the military where he and his unit parachuted into the ocean, and they needed to clear some cordage off of a inflatable raft and inflate that raft. And in the process of doing that, he did not have a sheath like this. He had just a regular knife. He pulled his knife out and actually popped the boat that they were supposed to be getting, their inflatable raft, and he popped one of the inflatable portions of that boat, causing him and his unit to spend a lot more time in the freezing cold ocean than they would have had to, or at least in a lot less comfort than they would have been able to get in the raft. So he came back and decided that he would design a sheath which would allow him to cut things like cord, maybe paracord, different things away from a raft without having to pull your knife out and expose that sharp tip. And if you were in a situation where you needed that, definitely the Sog Seal Pup sheath would be a benefit. I don't spend a lot of time parachuting into the frigid Atlantic Ocean, or Pacific for that matter, and then needing to cut away paracord from my inflatable raft. In fact, I have never parachuted, and I probably would never parachute into the ocean. So I don't need that feature, and I think many people don't need that feature. So I've simply used this pieces of bike tire to cover that up. I was more worried about that cutting things like a backpack strap. It wouldn't cut all the way through probably, but just starting to cut it as you pulled it out or put it on your gear and things. So I've just used those little pieces of bike tire. That's the first little modification that I have done to this Sog Seal Pup Elite sheath. Another thing that I have done is I have changed the distance here on the sheath, and let me show you guys what I mean. What I mean, we'll take the knife out here, is simply this. If you can see those two holes, that is originally where these two screws went in, and I got 2 inches down, if you see those, from those two holes right here. So the overall distance of my sheath that my sheath takes up is just at 11 inches. Actually, just a little bit under 11 inches. The overall nature of that sheath would have been more like 13 inches coming up here. And I am going to bring up another term again, which I've used in previous reviews and which I've kind of coined, and that's slap factor. The distance, the smaller that this distance is, where my belt comes in and the sheath rides, the less this is going to slap when I try and run. If the longer this is out here, the longer my belt loop comes out here, the more this knife is able to smack my leg as I try to run, jog, or move quickly. And I hate that. I hate that slap factor. It becomes a giant slap factory when you're trying to run, and this is just a whack, 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 whack. And that really makes having a sheath knife on my belt very uncomfortable. So I wanted to get that slap factor down, so what I did is I simply just drilled 2 holes in this little kydex piece here that Sog already was using, and then I just reattached those screws simply right here, lessening the distance and lessening the slap factor. I also used some of these Ranger bands, which are just those bike tires, to cause this band here, which is excellent, that Sog put some Velcro on there, allowing you to put this on and off your belt easily. I just slipped those over into there so that it would not move as much, using just now this attachment point there. So it kind of made it feel like the knife is a little more rigid there. Another thing which I have done is I modified the way that this retention strap connected to my Sog Seal Pup sheath. I was out on a sailing trip, and I jumped from the sailboat into a dinghy that we were going to go ashore, and this snap system caught actually on the railing of the sailboat, and it tore it straight off. And I was able to find it, and I modified it by simply using a Chicago screw. That wasn't Sog's problem, that was my problem for having my gear snag something. You know, this knife sheath was designed to hold this 5.4 ounce knife into its sheath, not to suspend a 150-pound man from the rail of a sailboat. So it popped off, and I fixed that, but that's not Sog's problem. The retention on this sheath that I got was not that great. It would just set right in there, and I could jiggle the knife, and it would kind of jiggle out, and then that made me need to have this knife snapped into the sheath to make sure that I wouldn't lose the knife. And I watched some YouTube videos, and there were guys that were just complaining and moaning that their knife sheath wasn't right, that Sog had somehow produced a batch of them that wasn't using enough retention. And I got to thinking, how would Sog do this? What would the machine that Sog was using to make these knife sheaths, how would it not create the proper retention in the knife sheath? So I got out a candle, and I got out my trusty Bic cigarette lighter, which I use as a tool. I don't smoke, but definitely use the Bic cigarette lighter for a tool, for whether it's backpacking, camping, or just having an instant flame and light there. And I just heated, using a little tea light, I just heated the kydex, okay, up, and then I just took my Leatherman and I just pressed it in there. I actually took it off, and I did this to both sides of this sheath, just undid those screws right there. And I heated the sheath up, and I took the knife out, and I pressed it in, gave it a second or two to cool on both sides, and then I inserted the knife, and I just played around with it, heating the kydex and pushing it in until I found the correct amount of retention for me. And that means now that even without this buckle system being closed, my Sog Seal knife is not going to come out. And I imagine that's how Sog intended these sheaths to come from the factory. But if yours didn't, don't freak out. You don't even need to call Sog. It's not a big deal. You can just get a little tea light, even just use your cigarette lighter, just warm that kydex up a little bit and press it in with the knife not in the sheath. Give it a couple seconds, play with it, heating it up. Just be careful that you don't overheat the kydex. So I have modified my Sog Seal Pup Elite's sheath quite a bit. And that's something that you could do. It's, for the cost of what, 10 cents or something for the tea light and the cigarette lighter or whatever you want to do. It would be very easy to modify that. This had broken, right? So let's just go over again the modifications I did. I just used bike tire. That was cheap. It didn't cost me anything to cover this up. I then changed the screw position so that I'd have less of a slap factor. I'd be able to bring that up more to my center of gravity on my belt. That cost me nothing. I used the same materials. Used some more of those bike tire pieces, those Ranger bands, to secure that in just a little bit better way. And then I simply had to fix this strap, right, because I broke it, and then I simply had to heat the kydex up just a tiny bit and press it in so that the retention on the knife blade was how I wanted it. So it really cost me nothing except for that one Chicago screw, which I broke the strap. That was my fault. To modify this knife and the sheath to my desired abilities. But as it comes from the factory, I think this is an excellent sheath. It may not bother you to have that little cutting device there on the front. It bothered me because I didn't want to cut my gear. You may not care. You may not be bothered by slap factor. You may just decide to run a cord through there and tie this down your leg, and it won't slap around on your leg at all. And you may not need any of these little modifications that I've done to the sheath. However, you may want to, if you get a Sog Seal Pup, kind of shorten the overall dimension of the sheath and the strap system, as I have done. Guys, I would definitely, guys and gals, I would definitely recommend the Sog Seal Pup Elite knife to you. I prefer the Sog Seal Pup Elite over the Sog Seal Pup. just because of some of the changes they've made, especially in the sheath. I like the Sog Seal Pup Elite sheath better than the Sog Seal Pup sheath. I definitely would recommend this knife to you. I think it was an awesome, just a working knife, and overall excellent blade. One which you guys could use in a environment where there was salt water, an environment where there would be a lot of moisture, whether you're in a kind of a jungle environment or just in a part of the country where there's a lot of rain. I love the grip. I love the sheath. As it comes, I think it is an excellent knife. I would definitely recommend it to you if you're looking for a quality medium fixed blade knife. Guys, thanks for your reviews. Thanks for your subscriptions. This is the Gear Tester signing off.